3, 2, 1.
My name is Gavin and this is my stock prediction project. Goal. So the goal of this project was to make an AI that could make a graph that predicted the price of a stock given its earnings in the past 5 years and tested against the average median income of Americans during that time. As you can see here on the left, we have the S&P 500 closing prices from 2014 to 2019. And then on the right, you have the average annual US median income from 2014 to 2019. And the goal of this project was essentially to mesh these two together and see if we can make a predictive analysis document based on the performance of them in those 5 years. Design. For the project, I mainly coded in Python while importing numerous AI and plot libraries such as TensorFlow, NumPy, Pandas, and Keras, which I will show in the next slide. The code was mainly structured around first displaying the plots and then making a final plot that showed the predictive graph side by side with the original stock graph. I also built a model to train the data so that way we can make predictions on how the stock would rise or fall. So over here, you can see the code that I used to import all the Python and AI libraries. We have Pandas, NumPy, the plotlib, which is essentially what we use to plot all the graphs, TensorFlow, and LSTM models, which we use to use the AI predictive graphs. Test. I tested the program by updating it every time I ran some new code. There are numerous updates on the project as I added more and more libraries and installed new versions in Anaconda and my terminal. The original test version actually used GME stock instead of the S&P 500, but I switched over to S&P 500 because I had a better correlation to the data. And down here, you can actually see what the predictive price of the GME stock was over here. So over here on the right, we have the closing prices for the last 5 years. And over here, we have the predictive prices for the last 5 years. Rethink. If I were to do this project again, I'd focus on making it more user-friendly, as right now, to replace the stock, one would have to manually download the CSV and make sure the variables lined up, which I will show in the next slide. Also, the x-axis of the bottom graph doesn't necessarily reflect the predicted price in years. It's just mostly there to show what the predictive graph is and what it looks like. So I want to fix that as well to try and see if I can make it more user-friendly and have it actually show, where exactly it would be in, 1 year, 2 year, or 5 year, or 10 years. Also, another question I got was how would this predictive model work with stuff such as COVID or sudden market crashes? And to be honest, that would be something I want to work on as well, to have it be able to account for things such as market crashes or fluctuations in the world, such as COVID, which drastically affect the stock market. Over here's the code that I have that essentially runs the plots and the closing prices. The problem with it is if you wanted to replace a stock such as, say, something like GME, you would have to literally go into the code and replace everything that mentioned GME and the closing prices and have it make sure that the CSV, which is essentially what we use to download the data sets, and make sure those two columns are the same. And that's not really user friendly. So I'd want to try and update it to make sure maybe you can essentially type in the stock and plug and chug from there. Demo. Let's see. Let me share my screen. So here we have my actual S&P closing prices code. In this first window, we have the closing prices from 2014 to 2019. In the second plot, we have the average annual US median income from 2014 to 2019 as given by Fred. And over here, finally, we have the closing versus the predicted prices. This blue graph represents the closing prices of the S&P 500 from 2014 to 2019. And this orange graph is the predictive prices where it is. But these years aren't exactly accurate. It's not actually going to be that low in 500 years. And that's it. Any questions?
So what you're comparing is a correlation between the people's income versus how the stocks did for that year?
Yes, for the past 5 years.
5 years. Oh, okay. Is it what stock was this again?
This is the closing price of the S&P 500. Originally, I used GameStop because I thought it'd be, I thought I'd use it as a test stock to try and run against the median income. But as we ran that graph, we started to realize that that wasn't a really good correlation to median income, like a GameStop versus median income. It didn't really correlate. So I decided to use the S&P 500, which I thought would be a better graph.
So this graph is saying the more people earn, the more they're willing to put money into the stock market.
Pretty much. Yes,
okay.
but the reason that this dip down here happens is because it goes till the end of 2019, which essentially is around the time COVID hit. So that would explain the sudden drop, which is why if I were to do this again, I'd try to have it predict stuff like that.
Okay, and then where do you feed all this information? Is this in a TensorFlow, or where do you feed all this information?
All this information goes into a TensorFlow and an LSTM model, and both of those things essentially take the data from the two graphs that we import in, which is the median income and the closing prices, and we just essentially run those two against each other to see like if they correlate at all, whether if given those two data we can go up, we think it will go up or go down based on the correlation between the two.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Do you have questions?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, awesome. Good job, Gavin. Thank you. And then that's it.
All right, perfect. Thank you.